Good morning, everyone. We are up to Perek Bey's Mishna Daled. One may not separate truma from one species of produce for another, which means if you have two different species of things, you cannot separate truma from one for the other. You cannot separate wheat for wine or wine for wheat. It's completely different, two different species. Anything that's classified as two different species, you cannot separate truma from one for the other. As we've been saying, you could have two piles of tevel, that means produce that has truma and maasros haven't been taken from, and you can separate from one for the other. They both have to be of the same minos, have to be from the same species to be able to separate from one for the other. The imtaram, and let's say you went ahead and you did it, ain't truma say truma. The truma is no good. It's nothing. It's not a truma at all. This is the kind that's derived from the words of the Torah. They have to be from the same species in order for the truma to be valid. Mishna continues, Kol min chitim echad. All types of wheat are considered one species. Even though, as Bartender points out, there are different varieties. You have a red variety, you have a white variety. Nonetheless, if it falls under wheat, all types of wheat are considered one species. You can separate from the red for the white, from the white for the red. Next, kol min te'enim u'grei greisu devela echad. All types of figs, whether they are fresh figs, whether they are dried figs, or they are pressed into one solid block, they are all considered one species. Now, again, in figs, you have a light colored figs, you have dark colored figs. If it's a fig, then the point is that it's one species. Now, the Mishnah points out that actually when it comes to figs are processed or eaten in different ways. You've got fresh figs, you've got dried figs, and then sometimes you take the dried figs and they press it into this large block. Those are the three things mentioned. Te'enim are fresh figs, Gregorius are dried figs, Devela is pressed figs. The fact that they are processed differently doesn't take away from their being the same species, and the fact they can be different colors, different types of figs, it doesn't make a difference. They're all considered one species. You can go ahead and separate from one for the other. And the Torah mizeh al zeh, and therefore you could separate from one for the other, which means that if you want to separate, that means that from the point of halacha, from what's called the letter of the law right now, if you want to separate from the dried figs for the fresh figs, for the block of figs, not a problem. It's all considered one species. You can separate from one for the other. Now we're going to qualify that a little bit. And the Mishnah continues, and also, there's no issue of separating from dried figs for dried figs. Here the issue is so there's no issue of that. I'm jumping the gun here a little bit. Okay. Wherever there is a kohen, you separate from the best. And wherever there is no kohen present, you separate truma from that which will last longer. So we've already, I believe we have mentioned a halacha previously that the Torah mandates, it's not obligatory in the sense that it doesn't work otherwise, but the Torah obligates that we separate truma from the best of our produce. What we separate, the truma that we separate and give to the kohen, should be minayafa. It should be from the choicest of our produce or of the food that we're separating from. Now, when you talk about, going back to Mishna's continuing discussion about the figs, we have the fresh figs and we have the dried figs. Fresh figs are considered better than dried figs. Okay? And therefore, essentially, if you're going to separate from one type of fig for the other type of fig, from the fresh for the dried, if those are the two piles that you have, those are the choices that you have, you should be separating from the fresh figs for the dried figs, because you should be taking minayaf. You should separate truma from the best of your produce. Okay, but the Mishnah qualifies that. If a kohen is present, you have a kohen, he's here. You can give him the truma right away. You'll give him the fresh figs and he'll have a chance to eat them right away. So that's a chance where you have to give him the best of the figs. So it's better, the figs are better when they're fresh than when they're dried. And therefore, the Mishnah says, if a kohen is present, you have a kohen to give the truma to right now, then you separate from the better ones, which would be the fresh figs. But let's say there's no kohen present. Then you separate truma from that which will last longer. Then you're going to separate from the dry figs. If you separate truma from the fresh figs, there's no kohen, they're going to spoil. And therefore, it's better that what you separate truma from should last longer, so that when you find the kohen, you can give it to him, and it'll be edible, it'll be usable. And therefore, in a situation where there's no kohen present, what's considered the best of the produce is that which will last longer. Therefore, the Tanakh, the first opinion of the Mishna, says that if a kohen is present, you separate from the yafa, from the higher quality one, which is the fresh figs. But if there is no kohen present, so giving the better quality figs, they're going to spoil. They can possibly spoil by the time that you find a kohen to give it to them. Then you separate truma from that which will last longer, so that you have a chance to actually give it to a kohen to eat. Rabbi Yehuda says, you always separate from the better quality. According to Rabbi Yehuda, when the Torah mandates separating from the best of your produce, it always means better quality no matter what. The truma itself that's separated always has to be from the better quality, from the better one. The fact that it's going to last longer doesn't make it the better one, doesn't make it the more choice one. Right now, if you have fresh and you have dry, the choice ones are the fresh. Therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, at the end of the day, the separation of truma itself has to always be from the best of your produce. And right now, the best of your produce is the higher quality ones, the fresh ones. That is what you separate truma from. Nonetheless, the Yad Avram brings down that even when you go ahead, according to Rabbi Yehuda, even if you go ahead and you separate from the actual truma separated from the fresh, you should be doing something to help them last, so that they will eventually so that they can be eaten by the kohen. You should dry them afterwards to make sure that the kohen will have. But interesting, they bring down that you could actually charge the kohen for the expense of processing the figs, because you didn't have to do it. From your point of your obligation to separate truma, you separate the best. Whatever happens, happens. That's according to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Whatever happens, happens. Right. You're always going to separate from the best. If it doesn't last, you did your part. It's a good thing. You want to make sure, truma should be eaten. Truma should be treated properly. It should be eaten. And therefore, you should process them to do it. But you could actually charge the kohen for it, because it's for his benefit. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is we should make it last. The reason we should make it last for the benefit of the kohen. The benefit of the kohen, we could actually charge him for the drying process. But it's definitely something that we should consider doing, going through the effort of, in order to make sure that the kohen will actually get the truma to be able to eat it. And when we're talking about that, there's no issue of separating from dry figs for dry figs. There's no issue with that. The whole issue was from dry figs to fresh figs, in a situation where you have a kohen present. So then your choice produce, your best produce is the one of higher quality, which is the fresh. And therefore, if you shouldn't be giving from the lesser quality, from the not choice, from the dried for the fresh. If you do it, it works. But at the end of the day, from a practical point, that's not what you should be doing. But of course, if both are the same, they're both dried, there's not going to be a kind of issue of separating from one for the other. Let's do the Sefer HaMitzvot now. A prohibition against encroaching upon another person's boundary. The Jewish people came to Eretz Yisrael. The land was divided up amongst them, and that is their land that the Torah has given them. So, and whether land is sold afterwards, whatever it may be, at the end of the day, in Eretz Yisrael, there's a prohibition, a specific prohibition about encroaching upon somebody's property. You move the boundary, making it look like this land belongs to you, but it really doesn't. You're stealing the land. But you're not, right? You're stealing the land. You're encroaching upon somebody's property. The Torah says specifically you may not do that. You shall not move the landmark of your friend in the inherited land that you will inherit. Moving the landmark means you're taking from that person's ground, from that person's land. Now, but the point is, as the Chavetz Chaim mentions in the heading, this specific prohibition, not to move the landmark, not to encroach upon somebody's property, is only in Eretz Yisrael. It's only in the land that you've inherited. That specific prohibition. But the Chafetz Chaim continues, if you encroach upon someone else's land, someone else's boundary, only a finger's worth, only the width of a finger, okay? Even outside of the land of Israel, if you took it by force, Harei Zeg Gazlan, you are considered a Gazlan. If you did it secretly, did it without him realizing it, Harei Zegana, if you are then a thief. So if you recall, there's a prohibition, like sigzal, don't be a robber, which means to openly go and take something away from someone in front of him. There's a prohibition of lo signov, do not steal, which means don't be a thief in the sense of stealing from him without his realizing it. Those are two prohibitions of the Torah. So those prohibitions, the transgressor of prohibitions will apply by land. There are certain halachic ramifications of stealing that don't apply by land, but the prohibition of leisigzol or leisignai, the prohibition against stealing, robbing, this prohibition does apply by land. So if you encroach on a person's land, even a teeny amount, you are a thief. You're a ganef. You're a gazlan, depending on how you do it. The specific prohibition here of do not move the landmark does not apply in Chutz La'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael. This applies in all places at all times, both by men and by women. Have a great day.